Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? It feels like the Super Bowl just ended, but the NFL offseason is in full swing, and believe it or not, the NFL Combine is here, and then free agency will start shortly after that. So I thought it was a really good time to sit down and break down my top 20 players heading into free agency that could end up having fantasy impacts in 2025. Now, this list is not in any particular order, just the top 20 players that I'm going to be taking a look at for fantasy purposes and what will happen with them during free agency this offseason. Now, there is a couple of things that we need to remind everybody about. Number one, franchise tags can be placed on these players all the way up until March 4th. So a guy like T. Higgins is not going to be included on this list because Cincinnati has already made it known that they plan on franchise tagging him. So he can play 1 year under the franchise tag. He could potentially sit out, or he could come to a long-term deal with Cincinnati. But as of right now, it doesn't look like he's going to hit free agency. And then, of course, with the NFL, we have the legal tampering period. This is where teams can start reaching out to players and talking to them about potential deals. That will start on March 10th at noon. And then on March 12th at 4 p.m., that is when free agency will officially begin and when players can officially ink their deals and move forward with their new teams or re-sign with their old ones. Now, because I have 20 players that I'm going to list, today is going to be a boom, 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 let it flow type of video where I'm going to be rolling through these 20 players, giving a little piece of information about each one of them, and then moving on to the next guy. But you can definitely be prepared for tons of videos this offseason that are going to be diving deep into each of these players, especially if they end up signing with new teams. In fact, the tampering period is a really fun time for me because I am doing breaking news videos consistently as news comes out that players will be moving with new teams. So if you are wanting to keep up with all of the breaking news for NFL free agency, hit that subscribe button. I'll have everything you need. Let's kick it off. Number one, Stefon Diggs. He's going to be 31 years old next season, and he's coming off of an ACL tear. Really, in free agency, I don't know if he's going to have a whole lot of a market. I think his best bet is probably re-signing with Houston, but you never know. A wide receiver needy team could be willing to go the risk and bring him in on a 1-year prove-it deal. Keenan Allen feels like he's been in the league a lot longer than Stefon Diggs, but he's only a year older. Now, you can definitely tell Father Time is catching up with Keenan Allen a little bit. He's not coming off of a major injury like Stefon Diggs, but I really don't know what his free agent market will look like either. There's a few younger wide receivers in this free agent market that you might be willing to invest in outside of a guy like Keenan Allen, who really, if you bring in, you're bringing him in to be a veteran presence. But I do feel like he has a little bit left in the tank for at least another year run, whether it be with Chicago for one more year or he decides to re-sign with the LA Chargers. He's made it known he's interested in not only re-signing with the Chargers, but potentially joining the LA Rams as well. Number three, Amari Cooper, another guy that feels like he's been in the league forever, but he's only 30 years old. I definitely feel like some team out there is going to take a gamble on Amari Cooper and give him at least a 1 or a 2-year deal. Let Amari Cooper reestablish some value, and then maybe he hits the free agent market again at 31. The tape that we see from his time in Buffalo is not indicative of the type of wide receiver he is. He could still get it done if he signs with the right team. Chris Godwin at number 4 is only 28 years old, and he is also coming off of a major ankle injury, but his return to play looks a lot more clear than if he were to have an ACL or something like a ligament issue, because when he broke his ankle, he didn't have an issue with the ligaments, and he should be good to go for the 2025 season. Some team out there is definitely going to be invested in Chris Godwin. I'm questioning whether or not he returns to Tampa Bay. With the breakout and emergence of Jalen McMillan at the end of the 2024 season, Tampa Bay may be willing to eat a little bit of that money that they would have given to Chris Godwin, try to use it elsewhere in free agency, and let Chris Godwin walk. It would not shock me if he ends up with a different team, but I also think that he could be a candidate for a franchise tag. At number 5, DeAndre Hopkins, another aging wide receiver that may not have much much left in the tank. This is a guy that I definitely could see being unsigned way into the offseason. Him and Keenan Allen really are the two major ones at the wide receiver position. But even though they have been fantasy impact players for us before, their time is starting to run out. And for DeAndre Hopkins, we just didn't see a whole lot with him and Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Every once in a while, he got you some points, but towards the end of the season and even the Super Bowl, he was a distant afterthought. Sam Darnold was on track to make a ton of money heading into the 2025 season, but unfortunately, a couple of bad games to end the year just won't get it done for him. Going into the offseason now, someone is going to invest in Sam Darnold. It's not going to be nearly the type of contract we once thought, but there's going to be needy QB teams that are going to be willing to give Sam Darnold a look. He played well this past offseason. Maybe he's not going to be a guy that's going to win you a Super Bowl, but for a team that needs to bridge the gap to a young starter, Sam Darnold could absolutely end up getting a 2 or a 3-year deal. I just don't think it's going to be from Minnesota. A 30-year-old running back typically isn't going to get a whole lot of looks in free agency. Now, Derrick Henry might be the exception to the rule from last season, but Aaron Jones, unfortunately, just has not been able to stay healthy over the course of his career. And even this past season, he had some times where he was banged up once again. He had career highs all over the place, though, so he stayed healthy enough and stayed on the field long enough to at least give teams some production to look at. But at 30 years old, he's going to have to find a team that will give him more than half of the touches. And right now, with the way the running back market is, I just don't know if that's going to happen. Justin Fields at number 8. Pittsburgh seems like they want to re-sign Justin Fields and bring him back for another season. And I would much rather have that than 36-year-old Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. And I also would rather have any offensive coordinator than Arthur Smith. But unfortunately, that's not changing. For Justin Fields, more than likely, he ends up back in Pittsburgh. But this is another quarterback, only 25 years old, that could end up in a decent situation where a team is looking to bridge the gap to maybe a different starter. But maybe Justin Fields has a Baker Mayfield-esque return to glory and ends up fitting in the right spot and finally becoming a reliable starter. At number 9, Najee Harris. He's only 26 years old still, and because of that, I could see him being one of the most sought-after weapons on the free agency market. Now, his time in Pittsburgh had up and downs. He looked good at times, he looked mediocre at times, and really, when you take a look at the numbers, he was really average over the course of his time in Pittsburgh. But that doesn't mean that if he doesn't sign with the right situation, with the right team, that he wouldn't be a whole lot better. Think about Denver, for instance. Signing a long-term deal in Denver for like 3 or 4 years could definitely put him in a much better situation than he was in Pittsburgh. At number 10, Darius Slayton, and this is a name that a lot of people probably are not going to talk about. But at only 28 years old, he has shown the ability to be a down-the-field threat for the New York Giants. And if he were to sign on to a team as, let's say, like the number 2 wide receiver, he could end up doing a whole lot of good as a field stretcher that has some big performances, even if it's not a whole lot of consistent performances to go along with it. Think about him landing with like a Los Angeles Rams. Maybe if they keep Matthew Stafford and they don't end up trading him, you have Puka Nacua, but you're going to be getting rid of Cooper Kupp. Tutu Atwell is also a free agent. You sign a field stretcher like Darius Slayton, he's going to be a guy that Matthew Stafford could find from time to time. Do I think he signs with the LA Rams? Probably not, but a situation similar where he can be a field stretcher with a veteran quarterback and not have to be the number 1 wide receiver could do him a lot of good. Darius Slayton is a prime example of why I love NFL free agency, because for a guy like him that's been in New York, it hasn't really been a situation where he's been able to show consistent success. But now in free agency, he could level up his game by signing in a much better situation. And the same way Darius Slayton might be leveling up his game this offseason, we level up our game through Turtle Beach. Turtle Beach has some of the best products on the market, especially their headphones. I absolutely love their 2-tier system with their headphones, where I can plug them into my computer, and not only can I have all of the sound from my video game coming through, but I can also make it so the sound from my music comes through as well. So I can sit back, chill, relax, listen to some music, play some video games, and unwind from a long day of fantasy research. And right now, you can get Turtle Beach products for 10% off by using code word headliners. Head on over to turtlebeach.com, use code word headliners when you check out, and you're gonna get 10% off of your entire order. I tell you what, you are not gonna regret getting anything from Turtle Beach, whether it be their headphones, a new mouse, or a new keyboard, or maybe you need a new controller for your computer as well. turtlebeach.com, code word headliners, and get 10% off. Let's talk about a couple of tight ends back to back here. Now, the tight end market, not going to be great this offseason. Mike Gesicki is coming off of a season in which he had an okay year, up and down at times with the Cincinnati Bengals, and that's what Mike Gesicki is. He's a receiving threat that's going to give you some good games, but he's not really going to give you good games at other times either. Now, the one situation that I want to keep an eye on is potentially the Denver Broncos, because in the past, the tight end position has been a big part of what Sean Payton does, but he hasn't really found that answer at the tight end position with his current stable in Denver. Maybe Mike Gesicki could be the need in that offense instead of adding a veteran wide receiver to give Bo Nix a second target. Juwan Johnson is also an interesting fit for some teams this offseason. In New Orleans, he wasn't really used consistently, but he was looked at in the end zone. He is a big red zone threat, and in the right offense, he could definitely end up turning some things around, the same way that Evan Ingram did when he went to Jacksonville. Or even a guy like Jonnu Smith in this past year in Miami. He was able to find himself in a new situation where he was targeted more often, and we finally saw a lot of that fantasy potential. Juwan Johnson could end up doing the same. Nick Chubb is already 29 years old, and unfortunately, time is running out for him to get back to being that fantasy all-star contributor that we used to see. His best bet this offseason is signing a one-year prove-it deal, going out and having a really solid season, and maybe getting a 2-year deal at 30 years old. But the running back market is not that great, and there's not a ton of teams out there that are going to be willing to invest in a 29-year-old running back who came back last season off of a major knee injury and just didn't look like his former self. But if there's one freak out there that is a workaholic that could get himself back and at least give us another couple of years, it would be Nick Chubb. But investing in a 29-year-old Nick Chubb doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you have a 24-year-old Javonte Williams out there. I do not see the Denver Broncos giving him any type of a deal or giving him the franchise tag either. Javonte Williams, I think, makes it to free agency, and I think he could make a team look really, really good. In fact, signing with a team like the Chicago Bears, I know it won't happen, but DeAndre Swift is not the guy for me. He is not the answer. Javonte Williams is a guy that when he came into the league as a rookie, he was one of the better efficiency running backs in all the NFL. And then he had an ACL injury. And when that happened, it caused some issues upon his return. And then his fit in a Sean Payton offense just didn't look good. If we can get Javonte Williams in the right situation, he could find himself as a fantasy viable running back once again. We've talked about a couple of guys that might need to sign a prove-it deal, and that's exactly what J.K. Dobbins did last year. And he's only 28 years old, and for a majority of the season, he stayed healthy. Had some issues towards the end of the season. We'll have to see what happens with J.K. Dobbins moving forward, but he definitely has earned the potential to sign another 1 or 2 year deal since he's only 28. Winding up back in Los Angeles would not shock me one bit. He's familiar with the offense. Jim Harbaugh obviously loved him last season, and having him there for another year would not shock me. Let's stay with the Chargers and talk about Josh Palmer. He was definitely not considered a part of that offense last year. Mike Williams will also be a free agent, so it'd be interesting to see if they do try to bring Josh Palmer back. But he's only 25 years old, and after being underutilized for a majority of his tenure there in Los Angeles, it wouldn't shock me if he looks elsewhere this offseason. There are definitely some teams out there, however, that could use a 25-year-old field stretcher, and he could definitely have some potential in the right offense. Rico Dowdle definitely earned himself a contract this offseason. More than likely, it's not going to be with Dallas, though, and I don't think it's going to be a lucrative deal either. Unfortunately, I don't think Rico Dowdle is going to sign in a situation where he's going to give you a ton of numbers as the main back. He's probably going to find himself in a situation where he's a 1A, 1B type of player. In that case, if it's not the right situation, he's not going to get enough work to be fantasy viable. We have a couple of restricted free agents at the running back position that may end up hitting the open market as well. It's clear that Pittsburgh doesn't see Jaylen Warren as a main part of their offense. It's crazy because Arthur Smith couldn't give Bijan Robinson all the carries in Atlanta a couple of years ago, but he sure seemed hellbent on giving Najee Harris all the carries this past season. Jaylen Warren hopefully is not re-signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, is allowed to hit the open market, and can find himself in a situation where he's utilized much better. It will be interesting to see if the San Francisco 49ers allow 25-year-old Jordan Mason to hit the open market. In place of Christian McCaffrey this past season, he was excellent at times. Unfortunately, a couple of injuries at the end of the year kind of derailed that fast start. But for Jordan Mason, he absolutely earned himself a deal somewhere, given the fact that he's only 25 years old and he doesn't have a ton of hits on his body as of yet. But San Francisco would probably want to bring him back, knowing that Christian McCaffrey, unfortunately, the wear and tear is catching up once again. And last but not least, let's bring up Daniel Jones. It's going to be interesting to see if a team out there ends up investing in Daniel Jones as kind of their secondary option. Maybe they don't sign the free agent that they want, or maybe they're not able to move up in the draft and get a quarterback that they would like. A team like Las Vegas could be a team that easily could screw up their offseason once again and decide, we'll go with Daniel Jones. However, there are rumors out there that Daniel Jones apparently is being sought after by Arthur Smith and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know how true that is. Steelers are going to Steeler. And there's one name that I didn't mention in this list that you're probably going to be asking me about, and it's Aaron Rodgers. But Aaron Rodgers is not officially a free agent as of yet. He is still under contract with the New York Jets. Now, we anticipate obviously that being done, and he's going to be a guy that is going to be looked at very strongly by the New York Giants, unless they trade for Matthew Stafford. Then the LA Rams may take a look at Aaron Rodgers. The Las Vegas Raiders will probably be in on Aaron Rodgers. I know his time in New York was not the greatest, but I don't think that's going to stop QB-needy teams from lining up and trying to bring Aaron Rodgers into the fold. But Headliner Nation, let me know a couple of free agents down in the comments that you are keeping your eye on. Maybe not just for fantasy purposes, but for your own team. Maybe there's a couple of guys that you're interested in your team signing because you think that they would be a great fit. Let me know who and for what team and why you think they would be a great fit. But for now, Headliner Nation, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, leave a comment down below, and as always, turn on the bell notification so anytime we drop new content or go live, you'll know about it right away. Peace out, Headliner Nation. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.